Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first webinar of 2019. Very practical, straightforward title, Actionable Information for 2019 Planning. We want all of our content to be actionable. I think you're going to come away from today with a lot of valuable updates to help you as you're looking ahead to this year. So without further ado, I will jump in. I'll move pretty quickly through the content, and we'll have some time at the end if anyone has any questions, and there's lots of follow-up from this, as the name implies. I'm Dave Hodgins. I run the program, the LA Better Buildings Challenge. We'll be covering a bunch of stuff today. We'll get through all of these topics, not exactly in this order, but everything from revamped utility incentives and rebates, new partner benefits and ways to get involved, other ways that we have developed that we hope will be helpful to you in our advisory capacity here. Some updates on the EBEWE ordinance and the performance phase, which is starting, as I think everybody's aware, 2020, and some really exciting process improvements on the DWP data request side of things that I think is going to make that whole process much smoother. And then about some events and webinars and content related to all of that, as well as partnerships and everything that's ahead for the year to come. As usual, the webinar will be recorded, lines muted just to keep things orderly, but please do submit questions via the chat box, and I'll make sure to cover those. But before I jump in, I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. 2018 was really a pivotal year in a lot of ways. It was the third annual report rather on the mayor's sustainable city plan. And the conversation on efficiency has evolved and I think become more integrated and is reflected in the plan and in the conversations that I've been having lately, looking beyond just efficiency, but integration with renewables, with distributed generation, with demand response, with transportation, and ultimately moving beyond just efficiency. And we still do have these long-term targets, 14% by 2025, 30% by 2035 in our existing buildings, but ultimately moving off of coal and moving to a carbon neutral built environment. And we really have to do this, and I'll get to more on that, but I think everybody also saw all the headlines with the IPCC report that came out last year. Water is still front and center. It was great to get some rain and some snow the last few weeks, but the drought really is not over. And so that is still a major priority for us, and reducing our reliance on imported water. And you might be surprised, or maybe not, that 85% of the water that we use in LA is imported from other places. That means it's pumped over mountains and across hundreds of miles before it gets to our tap or our cooling tower. So getting smarter with how we use that water. We've done great collectively and individually on that metric, but continuing to find ways to do that, do it safely, and do it cost effectively is our mission. And also looking at innovative ways to reuse, to get more mileage out of that water that we are consuming here, and looking at ways to make the most of local supplies. The city is making massive infrastructure investments to clean up groundwater that's contaminated in certain areas of the city, as well as purifying stormwater and allowing now, as we saw at last year's Innovation Awards, the use of groundwater for things like cooling, irrigation, even for plumbing. We're in active conversations. So this is a huge priority for us, and I'll be talking more about an exciting partnership on that in a little bit here. But backing up and context and putting it in the global context, this most recent IPCC report came out last year, and I think that the headline-grabbing snippet was that we need to cut globally emissions 45% by 2030 to keep under 1.5 C. A lot of folks have been focused on 2 degrees up over the past decade or so. The new science is showing that there's a huge difference between what it's like to live on this planet between 1.5 and 2. So that half a degree makes a huge difference, and it's really, analogies I'm hearing are to almost like a wartime stance, a call to arms really to do everything we can. And the exciting thing about the work that you all are doing and that we're doing here is that as individuals who influence buildings, you have an outsized impact on the positive side of what can happen here. So it really is time for action, and not to be overly doomy, but this is the reality. Fires are larger, more frequent. That's not going to change, even if we cut the grass. Now, that's all happening in the context of the broader economy, and we're in the longest economic recovery or expansion ever in history. Nobody really knows, how long it's going to go on, but we try to stay abreast of what the research is saying and what all the smart people are saying. And according to ULI, I went to the Emerging Trends report release about a month ago, and based on the surveys that they've conducted from folks in the real estate industry, capital markets, both globally and domestically, and then locally here in Los Angeles, the consensus seems to be that the market is hitting a plateau. Rising interest rates are likely to rise. That's been all over the news, which could trigger a correction. People do seem to think that assets are appropriately priced for the most part in LA, but slower growth, is an implication here, and that means that the importance of each individual decision grows. That it's not prudent to simply count on appreciation and rent growth. We need to actively manage assets, actively look at ways to create value for tenants, and that includes expense reduction, ways to reduce energy and water use as a component of that, and also a focus on technology, and not just, of course, on efficiency, but on information technology, on fiber, on all of the technology that tenants, today's businesses leverage and depend on to do what they do. But all of that enables the backbone for smart buildings, for the Internet of Things, for, again, controlling, reducing, managing utility cost growth, which is, of course, happening in parallel with all that. So we have this kind of convergence of, climate change is real now. People are feeling it. And the economic factors are coming aligned to get folks focused, I think, on the importance of this at the building level. LA retook the lead last year in terms of cities with the most Energy Star buildings. So as I said, all of you are doing an amazing job. We need to, again, though, keep leading in this area, and this is an important title to hold. This is very important. And that just shows, though, that because this is like-for-like comparison for the most part, that the bar continues to get raised in LA. And so energy performance, water performance is an important basis to remain competitive in this environment. All of you are dealing with the existing buildings energy and water efficiency ordinance. We're now in year 3 of benchmarking for the larger buildings, year 2 for the mid-size, and this year the 20,000 square feet and up buildings will be benchmarking and participating. And this information is not just going into a black hole, it's actually now posted on the mayor's open data site. You can actually download the data set and work with it, see trends, see how your properties are performing, your clients' properties are performing relative to your peers. So that information is out there now. And the thesis, of course, is that more information means better decision making, and that's intended that people do look at it. So the good news is, in the context of our conversation, is that utilities are really the largest controllable expense that you have at a property. A lot of these other expenses are really fixed. You may be able to do better on some of these things through technology or automation, but for the most part, they're fixed. You need these things done. Of course, you need a certain level of utilities too, but is the building optimized? Are you taking advantage of all the opportunities to work in line with the way the building really needs to function for its intended use? So it's an area where we have control. And as I said, buildings are the biggest part of the solution, and you as real estate professionals can make an outsized contribution in this area, and that's really exciting. So our job here is really just to connect the dots. There's a lot of things happening here. Everybody's very busy, a lot on their plate, and so our role is to really, connect the dots, make sure that everybody's aware to the extent possible of the opportunities, risks, and resources that are relevant for them. So I'm going to just jump into some of our priorities for 2019 and ways that you all can get involved. And I'll start off with reducing our reliance on imported water. That's actually going to be the focus of our next webinar, is announcing our partnership with BOMA International and with BOMA of Greater Los Angeles to support local implementation of the BOMA W Squared Challenge. And W Squared stands for waste and water. For our part, we'll be focusing on water, but excited to collaborate with BOMA on this. We'll be launching this initiative on our February webinar next week, as I mentioned, and collaborating with BOMA on an outreach campaign to get buildings involved. And you're already doing most of the work here. Buildings are, of course, required to benchmark water by the ordinance. Waste is not part of that ordinance, but there's a separate ordinance for waste. This is a great opportunity to start building a data set that is really valuable for everyone. Getting towards actually benchmarking for water and waste. Case studies are an important part of that. Case studies are a key piece of what we do generally, but highlighting those examples of projects that are working, that are showing what's possible. These are two of them. These are two of our finalists from last year's Innovation Awards, both doing very innovative projects with regards to water reuse, water recycling at scale. So excited to work with BOMA and with the LA Chamber of Commerce, I should mention, and their crack marketing team to put together these case studies on participating buildings and highlight their success. And all of that contributes to developing a benchmark for water use. What is efficient in a high-rise office building in terms of water use intensity? Of course, that's an important question to answer for the ordinance too, because the way it's currently written, there is no exemption threshold until you meet code for water. But what is considered efficient and what's valuable for buildings to compare against? So we have the opportunity to do that, and looking forward to working with BOMA and their consultants to start to develop that, and with EPA. And in support of all those efforts, of course, we've got resources and services. These have all been tuned up and brought current. Some of these are existing, some are new. On the bottom right, you see our groundwater reclamation roadmap. There are certain areas of the city, and if you have this issue, of course, where the groundwater table is high. It's close to the surface, and you have groundwater infiltrating your parking garage or the foundation of your building, or perhaps a subterranean server room, as one building that we worked with had that issue. So now it's possible, rather than simply treating and pumping that to the sewer or the storm drain and paying a fee to do that, by the way, you can use that water, use it for makeup water for your cooling towers, for irrigation if you have landscaping at your property. Even certain properties we've been speaking with have the opportunity to flush toilets with groundwater and do so economically. So if that's an opportunity that you think you have at your property, please do reach out to us. We also have resources on opportunities with cooling towers. That's the other kind of huge opportunity out there, and most buildings can easily save 1 million gallons a year simply by revisiting your treatment methods and optimizing those. And we're agnostic as far as what the solution is, but there are a range of solutions out there, whether that's chemical, acid, moving away from chemicals. All of those are real solutions now, and DWP will incentivize all of them, including non-chemical. So this is a huge opportunity, and we're, again, very excited to partner with BOMA and the Chamber on this important initiative. We do a couple of events. One is coming up soon, and that's our Innovation Awards. It's the 5th year we've been doing this. And by innovation, we're not just talking about technology. That's kind of the word implies technology in a lot of people's minds, but really it's people that are running these buildings. It's people that are motivated to go above and beyond and develop partnerships, bring these projects together, bring their ideas together. So it is technology, but beyond that, it's organizational commitment from the top down and the bottom up. How are you engaging stakeholders, whether those are tenants or guests in a hotel or students in a school? How are they involved in the project? How are you partnering with your utilities? How are you partnering with your vendors? Is there innovation in terms of the way the project was executed, as some of our winners last year, particularly the Museum of Contemporary Art, able to stay open throughout the entire construction of a project that saved over 50% energy. So all of that counts, not just about technology. So again, this is a very prestigious award. I think it's a very unique award. We're very proud to partner with all of our collaborating organizations. The leaders of these organizations also serve as judges. So they're not just forwarding an email along, but really participating, and it's a great exchange of perspectives. We've got leaders from the business community, from the commercial real estate community, from the policy side, from the utilities, from academia, each of whom bring a different perspective and a dialogue about what makes these projects innovative. So it's a lot of fun, and I just want to thank all of these organizations for your support in promoting this year's awards. We got more submissions than we ever have, I think double what we got in past years, and so it's tremendous. Very excited about that. And in terms of details, timeline running up to that, finalists will be announced on March 1st. We're selecting the finalists shortly, I should say, and those will be released to the public on March 1st. We will be doing a webinar. Our March webinar will be a preview talking about all of the finalists in each category, and then the winners, of course, will be announced at the event on March 27th at the California Endowment. So I'm very excited. It's the most competitive field we've had, and actually great response. We're going to have to create new categories on the public side because we had such a response there as well. So very excited about that. And then our other signature event is our technology showcase. This one started earlier. This was the first event we ever did, so we're a couple of years ahead. It's our 7th annual technology showcase. It always takes place around the same time. In August, this year it's August 9th. The format, if you haven't been before, is a lot of fun. It's fast pitch presentations from a max of 20 technology companies that are recommended by our LABBC partners, you. And so we will be reaching out with our Q1 newsletter shortly, and we'll be asking for your input. What are the technologies that have been most effective for you that you would recommend for others to look at? And so we whittle that list of recommendations down, and we'll organize fast pitch presentations from each of them, as I mentioned. We have lunch. It's a beautiful venue. You're in and out with an update on the latest in technologies that really have been deployed successfully here locally by your peers. So that's a great event. Mark your calendars. Of course, we'll be sending emails, but people get busy. So August 9th is the date for that one. Shifting gears a little bit back to the ordinance, I do have a couple of timely updates that I wanted to share. You will be receiving an email from LADWP imminently to inform you of this, but for those of you listening in, one of the benefits of being part of the LABBC is this kind of firsthand updates. But now Portfolio Manager is back online. For those of you who may not have heard that yet, the EPA is open, people are back to work, and you can log in. When you do, you can see that DWP has already uploaded 5 years of historical aggregated data to your virtual meter if you requested it in prior years. If you've been uploading it manually, then you may want to consider submitting a request, because they will automatically upload that 5 years of aggregated whole building data. So if your building is not master metered, if your tenants are billed directly, it will really give you a more complete picture of how the overall building is performing, including the tenant spaces. And once you've gone through that process once, it goes on cruise control, and DWP will provide automated monthly updates, so no further action necessary. So this is a tremendous improvement over having to do this year after year. And to smooth that process out even more, they will allow self-certification for any new data requests. So if you've already requested in prior years and you went through the process of providing proof of ownership and all of that back and forth, you're good. The historical data has been uploaded, and you will be provided with monthly updates going forward. If you had been uploading manually, or if you have smaller buildings that are just now starting with this, you only have to go through it once, and the process will be much faster. So a very positive development there, and look out for communications from DWP and Building and Safety on that in the next couple of weeks. One final note on that is that who knows what will happen on February 15th with the political theater that's been happening. Energy Star could go down again, so recommend, if you do have the ability, if you've requested data in prior years and it looks like your 2018 data is complete, go ahead and submit your benchmarking report early. Don't wait for the June deadline. If you've got the full 2018 data in there when you log in, go ahead and submit that before February 15th, just in case Energy Star goes down again. The whole point of the ordinance, though, is not benchmarking. It's about this making that benchmarking data transparent, and the idea is that that leads to action, and some of that action is actually, or some kind of action rather, is required too by the law. So we've been at this top part, the annual benchmarking. Now we're in this bottom part that I just highlighted, the performance phase, as it's called. So that will start in the questions that have been outstanding, that have been or out there, specifically around how to submit data, and also related to the audit and retrocommissioning standards. And I'm very happy to be able to share some updates on that. The way to submit all of that data will be through a web-based platform called Building Energy Asset Score Audit Template. And that was developed by Department of Energy. Pacific Northwest National Lab are actually implementing the technology. Other cities, New York and San Francisco, have already formally adopted and announced this as the platform that they are using. A host of other cities are following suit, including LA. So this will be a single platform for submitting energy and water audit data, and also energy and water retrocommissioning data, as well as any other exemption materials. So if your building is exempt on the energy side because you're Energy Star certified, you have the plaque, you would still go into this very same platform and simply upload your proof of certification with some basic information about the building. This is, I underline the word submittal, because this is not required as the in-the-field data collection tool per se. If you or your service provider have another way of collecting the data that is sufficient for you, that's completely fine. This does not have to replace that. This is a means of submitting that data and making it very clear what data needs to be collected, and it enables a faster administrative process, a more streamlined administrative process on the city side, because there are required fields. So basically, the city knows that a report is complete when it's submitted. I mean, it's a lot of the review, and I think everybody knows how much time that can take when you've got professionals disagreeing about things. So that is in process now with testing on municipal facilities, on DWP and city-owned facilities. Formal guidance will be released in Q2, which is coming up very soon. We'll be doing trainings and creating a directory of service providers through an RFQ process in Q3 with a planned launch in summer. So really in parallel with the trainings and the creation of that directory of service providers. So do sign up for updates. I know that was a quick overview. One other note on that is that we're working now with ASHRAE National, and because of the interest from LA, New York, San Francisco, they are fast-tracking the development of a retrocommissioning standard. But through the course of the discussions that we've been having over the last year, it's become clear that the city's intent and other cities' intent with including retrocommissioning in the requirements was really, perhaps retrocommissioning was not the appropriate term. So for anyone that's looking for some interim guidance, I would just reassure you by saying that the standard that's going to be required will focus on scheduling, maintenance, and repairs of existing equipment. And that and the scope is in line integrated with the energy audit, so the measures would be observable during the course of a site visit. It will not require multiple months or years of trending and analysis. It will not require data loggers and what you might think of as retrocommissioning. So the term that's going to be used is a tune-up rather than retrocommissioning, and we're working with ASHRAE to formalize that. They're very supportive of that approach, and it's going to be integrated in with the standards. So that's a little bit wonky there, but all to say that it's going to be an integrated audit and retrocommissioning, both for energy and water, and all of that will happen through the Asset Score platform, as well as submittal of any other exemption documents. So more information forthcoming on that. Please do sign up for updates at betterbuildingsla.com, which is a separate website for the Resource Center, which is open to all buildings covered by the ordinance. Incentives are a very important part of the equation. A lot of the time, DWP, based on a lot of customer feedback, mainly related to turnaround times, and in an effort to improve their level of customer service, has revamped their programs. Most notably, the Custom Performance Program, which is really, for all intents and purposes, a catch-all for most measures that you might do, including HVAC, controls, building envelope, even lighting, if you're doing a comprehensive project. They've created a workbook tool, which is very interactive. It's very drop-down driven. In my review of it, I think the requirements are much clearer. It talks about the M&V approach that would be proposed for each type of project based on the building and the specifics of that situation. And the whole point is that payments are issued faster. And a lot of the engineering review functions have been outsourced through a partnership with SoCalGas. So the DWP program teams are not tied up, and they have limited staff resources. So I've heard a good feedback on the throughput time, and I know DWP is very excited about it and looking forward to hearing all of your feedback. This program includes more deemed measures. I think there's about 62 or so deemed measures, and that means a very simplified approach, kind of like more like a lighting project, where you simply enter some basic information and it will spit out the incentive, and that's the end of the conversation on that. It's not required to do any measurement and verification. But it's clear that any other measures that are rebated that are not on that deemed list do need M&V, and there's a process built in to agree on what that looks like before you get too far down the road. I should also point out that DWP was very instrumental in the development of the audit and tune-up standard that I was just speaking about before, and this whole asset score process, the tune-up standard we're co-developing with ASHRAE, dovetails very nicely with the Custom Performance Program workbook. So the idea is that if you do go through an audit and tune up, that information that you've gathered will be easily ported over into the Custom Performance Program workbook tool and will save you time going from audit to implementation. So more coming on that as well. As I noted here, we're planning to do a webinar in April. DWP is already hosting workshops. You can look at their website. Just Google LABBC CPP. It will come up. They've got workshops scheduled on the Custom Performance Program itself, and we're working together to develop guidance on user guidance on how these things integrate. But I'm very excited about the way that it's going, and I think we're going to have a much smoother process for all of this. A few changes on the lighting side that are important to point out. It's there on the website, but I think a lot of people that I'm talking to weren't necessarily aware that there's a differentiation now. Of course, the lighting incentive program was their most popular program, and they were dealing with a huge backlog. And so in order to most effectively get through that, they had to draw a line in the sand, this was DWP's decision, and say that that program, which requires more review, and that's the CLIP program, would just be for large buildings. And that's for the way they decided that was buildings with average monthly KW of over 200. If you look on your bill, that's called the facilities charge on the electricity section of the bill. If that number is over 200, CLIP is the lighting program for you. If that number, the facilities charge, is below 250, then you can actually get your lighting upgrades done for free through the direct install program. And so they've got licensed union electricians that will do that work for free. It's very high quality fixtures and lamps. They do have some criteria. If your lighting is already fairly efficient, they're not going to just replace it with an incrementally more efficient system, because that wouldn't be cost effective for the utility. But we're seeing a lot of application for this, and they look at, for purposes of figuring out eligibility, at the meter level. So if you've got multiple meters on your building, it's possible that even a very large building could be eligible for free lighting upgrades, as well as some other upgrades. It also includes toilets and faucets and aerators, pipe insulation as well, but lighting is the big kicker with this one. So we're working with several partners right now, some large multifamily properties, parking garages. A lot of properties will fall under this 250 kW. So take a look at your bill, and if you think there could be opportunities for lighting upgrades, definitely encourage you to take advantage of this. It's a very fast process. They're very responsive. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions on that. Webinars, we do these, of course, every month. We want to make this more interactive, and we want to make this really a way for our partners to share with one another. Just listing out some of the other topics we have coming up, but also in our newsletter, we'll be including a survey with a list of all the upcoming topics. This is a selection. And we would love to have our partners speak on these webinars. So there will be a survey that will give a brief outline, the title, and briefly what each webinar is about. And we'd love for you to indicate, hey, this one really resonates with me. I'd love to share how my firm looks at the real ROI of building performance upgrades. Or, I think that we're really good at selecting technologies and piloting those and then deploying at scale. Or we've just completed this really innovative water conservation project, and I'd like to share that with other people. So we want to hear from you. I don't want to be doing the talking on these things. We want this to be a forum, and for you to really interact with your other peers and use these webinars for that. So of course, we always like to partner with our collaborating organizations, and as we have in the past, we'll be partnering with the folks that you see here to help facilitate and broaden the audience. So look out for that as part of our next newsletter. That is all I had for today. So if anybody has any questions, I would welcome them. Very excited about where things are at this year and excited to be doing this work here in Los Angeles. Excellent. Well, we'll wrap there, and thank you everybody for joining, and look out for our newsletter in the next couple of days. And our February webinar, as I mentioned, will focus on the launch of the W² partnership with BOMA. Thanks, everybody.